Day one of the winter meetings is in the books. Stephen Vogt said some words, as the Guardians always do. We'll try to figure out what they mean and what they don't.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Guardians fans? Welcome back. Thanks for hanging out with us for the next half hour. On Locked On Guardians, we talk about your Cleveland Guardians because it's your team every day, from the majors, the minors, the draft, everything in between. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I'm Justin Lada, one of your two co-hosts, and for the last 3 years and counting, my friend and co-host Jeff Ellis. I've spent 18 years covering the Guardians minor league system as a prospect writer and editor.
As you mentioned, I'm Jeff Ellis. I've been here since Locked On expanded into baseball almost 7 years ago. Before that, I was a national writer at Scout 24/7, focused on prospects in the draft. I want to thank you for making today's episode your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. And a big shout out to all of our everydayers out there, especially all of our even keel ones. After we had some coach double speak, I can't think of the term from 1984. Someone will correct me in the comments below. But definitely had some of that occurring, which you should be used to by now. But we'll get into all of that.
Yes, it's always double speak. On today's show, we'll debate the ever-elusive right-handed power bat. Everybody wants to acquire one, and more evidence that they barely exist more than Bigfoot. Which Cleveland Guardians players made the quote machine on day one of the winter meetings and what they're saying. We start today's episode talking about the Guardians and what they're not saying and why. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. Place your live NFL bets all season long. So as always, the Guardians didn't actually have a ton to say for the most part on day one of the winter meetings. I have not seen Chris Antonetti any quotes there. Maybe he's just writing a prompt so Chris A.I. Tonetti can speak for him, because as we've determined, Chris A.I. Tonetti is pretty accurate at saying what Chris Antonetti would say. So maybe he's just saving himself some time and some energy. But Stephen Vogt did speak on day one of the winter meetings. He was at the table with Foul Territory. He was at the table for some press conferences as well with Major League Baseball. And, I saw a lot of people kicking up dust and a little bit of rage online. And we're never going to tell people how to feel. That's not what we're here to do. But I want to caution everybody again into being careful about what you read and trying to decipher things. And I say we're going to sit here and try to decipher things, but really we're probably more likely going to decipher what they're not saying. But it's important not to read anything into the Guardians are saying at the winter meetings. And honestly, most press conferences they have, like, unless there's actual news from to talk about, anything they say just doesn't really matter, because actions will speak louder than words, as they do in everyday life. And they're just not going to telegraph things with their words in general. And it's a lot of doublespeak. They are very generic. And Stephen Vogt has mastered the opposite of Kevin Malone on The Office, where instead of saying few words that do trick, he says lots of words that mean nothing.
Yeah, it's, the whole thing is basically my view on it is the MLB needs to stop trying to make the winter meetings happen. They're not a thing. Like, they occur, but it's not important in the grand scheme. There's events and parts of it that are interesting and fun. Things like, the draft lottery. That's something to pay attention to. The Rule 5 draft, but other than that, it's like these silly little sit down meetings where, none of this matters. No one cares. It generates talking points, so people care. But for the most part, we just spent the last, few days with absolutely nothing happening, because all of the GMs in baseball were traveling to one location and then kind of getting settled in, and nothing has happened so far. Now, a year ago, it was immediately after the lotto that Cleveland went out and made the Jimenez trade, so there was some big movement. But the winter meetings themselves are kind of much ado about nothing in general, and it's a lot of interviews that don't amount to a whole lot. And I don't know. I looking at the vote thing, it's like, yeah, you know what? He said positive things. You know what? That's what he's going to say. Like, he's never not going to say positive things. Like, it would be, no one goes in those meetings like, yeah, we think our catcher's a bum and we think this reliever has no feet. No, that's not how baseball works. Like, it's always, everything is 100% fantastic. Everything is great improvement. There's all these young studs you're waiting on that they're going to be there. It's the same story.
Everything is awesome.
Yes.
What's that from?
Lego movie.
And I started laughing because something did happen while you were talking. So the winter meetings matter, Jeff. How dare you? A free agent reliever just signed a minor league deal. James Karinchak to the Braves. How dare you say nothing happens at the winter meetings? James Karinchak has a job.
Wasn't he independent baseball like last year? He got cut by the White Sox before the end of May.
He did, yeah. He had shoulder issues again last year, or 24. Yeah, so he's back in the minors. Good for James Karinchak now at Cleveland. We'll talk more about relievers. I disagree a little bit. I think the winter meetings matter only for the what's the right word? The power, the notoriety of the sport. Because the winter meetings used to be a big deal, right? Because before you had like text messaging and all technology and ways to communicate, they did all get together at one place to drink and shoot crap. That was where things went down because they all got together in one space. Now, most of these GMs in these front offices, they get to their hotel suites and they never leave them. Like everybody travels to Orlando this year, and what are they all going to do? They're going to walk the lobby a little bit, and they're going to all be in their suites. They're not going to go into each other's suite. They're going to text each other. Like you're traveling all to one place to just text each other from your hotel room. You're like teenagers when they text each other from the same room. We all did that, right? It's just so silly from that standpoint. But it's a good event on the MLB's calendar. Like if the NFL marketing giant was running this, it would matter in the headlines because the NFL, for as much as I don't really care for the NFL over Major League Baseball, it knows how to generate publicity from its events. This could be an event that generates publicity, but it doesn't because baseball's offseason moves incredibly slow, and it's just a whole lot of inaction and risk aversion, all that kind of crap. That's why I think Major League Baseball's winter meetings should matter. They don't matter because of what you said, but it should matter for the calendar and the conversations. And instead, we get to hear about Stephen Vogt saying things like, well, internal guys have to step up and grow because they never talk about players that don't play for them. Like, it'd be great.
You can't. You're not allowed.
Well, you can talk about free agents, I guess, but you don't want to telegraph things if you're anybody. Like, okay, it'd be great. Like Mike Elias, the GM of the Orioles, he made a statement tonight saying they have the payroll space for 2 splashes. That'd be really great. I would love if Chris Antonetti or Stephen Vogt could say that kind of message, but they never have, and they're not going to. They're not going to tell. Like, they haven't been connected to Pete Alonso or Kyle Schwarber, but obviously they're not going to come out and say that. But they're not going to come out and say, "Yeah, we're really interested in Rob Refsnyder. We're really interested in Harrison Bader." Like, they're not going to come out and say that either. They're just not. So it doesn't do a whole lot of good between the lines because it's so vague. And more often than not, like you were talking about before, like the Andres Gimenez trade last year, there was no chatter about that happening. We kind of assumed they might shop Josh Naylor, but like that was just because of the contract situation. We didn't have any inkling that Gimenez was going to go. And I always say this, and I know it's a tinfoil hat, but like it's more about who they're not connected to. Like if you see them connected to a name, they're probably not going to get that player. Like the Brendan Donovan thing, probably not going to get Brendan Donovan, A, because of competition, but B, they've been connected to him. So maybe pay attention to the names they're not connected to, except for, Pete Alonso and Kyle Schwarber. So I'm going to say tinfoil hat time. Ketel Marte hasn't been connected to Cleveland. I'm going to hold out hope. And then another name that was bandied about was Brenton Doyle is getting some attention, I guess, from teams. I hope that's not Cleveland, though. They were connected to him, so I'm hoping it's not him.
Yeah, you know me. I think Marte they're not going to take on a 5-year contract for a guy in his 30s. That's just a full stop there. That's not the way the front office operates. No matter how good that guy is, they're just that they don't. We know the 7 teams that have contacted, and Cleveland's not one of them, so that's not a surprise. But it doesn't mean they're not going to do something. It doesn't mean they couldn't be in on other players. Doesn't mean, I mentioned yesterday, we know they were in on Taylor Ward. We're going to talk about right-handed bats later. There's another guy that's Taylor Ward-esque who, 1 year right-handed bat that they could look at.
They were in on Taylor Ward after they were told. We heard that after the fact. The
Yes.
but we tried.
But we know, yeah, but we know that they at least had a degree of interest, right? And again, I don't think they could match up with Rodriguez. They don't really have a guy like him. They don't have their equivalent. So if they were willing to consider that, we'll talk about some of the guys they might consider when we get into segment 3.
We will. But first, we're going to talk about the player Stephen Vogt did talk about on the first day of the winter meetings, and if we're buying what he's selling. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything in the game feels different. That is what makes live betting on FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're able to react to it in real time. And with FanDuel, the big bets can be placed as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to turn on a dime. You see a quarterback and receiver getting in rhythm. Defense is creating a big turnover, and FanDuel lets you jump right into the moment. The Guardians still plus 1,200 to win the American League in 2026. We'll see if any winter meetings moves can change that. The Browns, they are getting 7.5 from the Bears because they actually figured out how to play and get a quarterback. The Cavs, they're off until Friday because of the NBA Cup. But if you want to be right in the middle of the action all season long, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you all for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day, and now it's time to take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Guardians with no interruptions, members only Discord access, that's brand new, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonguardians.supercast.com. Check the link in the show notes to learn more. Make sure you're keeping up with things all Guardians all off season long. Hit the bell on YouTube. Get notified of all the new podcasts and reaction videos, live streams, which we'll have during the draft lottery that's going on. And then you can also auto download an audio. That's a great way to help the show too, and always keep the show in your feed. All right, Jeff. So we talked about what the Guardians won't say. You're on mute, so it doesn't really matter what you say. We can pay attention to what Stephen Vogt, you're back now. You can pay more attention to what Stephen Vogt said unprompted, which I think is more telling than the things that he said other places. So what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that our live stream of the draft is the day you're listening to this very podcast. It's today.
Yes. It's
so
today.
Just wanted to say that specifically.
Yeah, you could find the note. You could find that on YouTube, and you can schedule yourself to check that out at 5:30 p.m. Eastern when the lottery goes on. All right, so the thing Stephen Vogt did say, I thought that stood out at least on day one of the winter meetings. He's on Felt territory, and he was asked about players. I'm sorry, he said players already here would need to take steps forward. They were talking about the offense, and he said, a lot of our stuff. Improvement next year will be guys internally taking that step forward, which is what they always say. I know a lot of people had, again, we talked about in segment 1, had reactions to that saying they're not going to do anything. Well, again, they may or may not, but what Stephen Vogt says in Orlando on December 8th is not going to change that either way. But what he did say was he was asked when he made that statement about who internally has to step up or he thinks will step up next year. He said Bo Naylor, and he said it very quickly. Like that was, snap of the fingers. First player he brought up. He talked about his adjustments with the lower half, and he was really excited about the progress he made offensively towards the end of the year. Are you buying Bo Naylor as a guy who makes a big jump forward? I feel like we've talked about this. I don't know how many times. It was 2024. We were excited about, what he did at the end of 2023, and then we thought, oh well. We gave him a mulligan because, he had that bad year in Akron, remember, in 2021, and he bounced back in 2022. So we gave him a mulligan in 2024, but 2025 was bad. And then he had a couple good weeks here and there, but every time it felt like with Bo Naylor, like things were turning the corner. It went back to what they were doing before. So are you buying him as one of the guys that makes big improvements in 2026 to help this lineup? Because at the end of the year, Bo Naylor was sitting 5th or 6th in the lineup, which I'm not okay with unless Bo Naylor becomes the hitter we thought he could have been 3 years ago.
Yeah, I'm Bo Naylor. One, I do talk about BAPIP and I'm of two minds with Bo Naylor. I do talk about BAPIP and bad BAPIP luck, and there was some of that, and there's some signs that like he could have been better last year. But the other side, you go look at his Savant page, lowest expected batting average in baseball. Launch angle sweet spot, we know doesn't really matter. The only things he really does positively throughout the course of the year are he doesn't chase, he doesn't whiff, and he walks. He doesn't hit the ball hard. He doesn't square the ball up. He doesn't barrel. He doesn't have any of those traits that really make me think, he's going to be, you're just kind of hoping best case that he's like 10% below league average. Like that's where I am with him. I don't think you can expect anything more than that. That'd be a significant jump for a guy who really hasn't shown that. He doesn't hit the, like I said, he doesn't do any of the things to be successful. He doesn't hit the ball hard. He doesn't barrel. He doesn't, he struggles with a lot of various pitches. I don't see it there. And, I'll say this too, like the whole idea of people getting mad that this, let's be honest, the best chance this team has of improvement is the internal. It's guys like Lada being healthy. It's young players taking a step forward, because when you are a small market team, you're not going to get more than one, maybe two guys who you're going to hope to step in and do something. Like you're hoping, I mean, any small market team, the majority of improvement has to be internal. That's the nature of the beast. So I don't think what Vogt said is out of line. I think, majority of your improvement has to be the internal. You have to hope the guys continue to take steps forward. But with Bo Naylor, it was a great month. We've seen him have a great month towards the end of the year. At this point in time, like I said, maybe there's you're looking at the BAPIP for some better luck, but that batted ball profile is still pretty ugly.
Yeah, we know September has been a great month for Bo Naylor throughout his career. Last year, 290 batting average, 548 slugging percentage, by far the best month of the year he had in 2025. If you want to, squint and kind of look at the best thing you can for Bo Naylor is that in the month of September last year, he had a 48.1% hard hit rate, which is by far the highest of his career ever. He's never had a month with that high of a hard hit rate. So if you want to believe that those changes took root in September a little bit more, that's great. I hope that's the case, because I do like Bo Naylor as I did like him as a prospect, and I think he's good for this team in general. It's just we've been waiting for it to happen. He hasn't shown any consistency. I just thought it was interesting that maybe he wasn't trying to put pressure on Chase the Lauder. Like I know we're kind of reading it between the lines of the comments, and we said be careful not to do that. But it could have been easy for him to say, well, Chase the Lauder is the guy that's going to improve our offense because he's going to be on the team and we like him. Instead of putting that pressure on a rookie, maybe he puts it on Bo Naylor because he's seen Bo Naylor put in the work and thinks it's going to pay off. And he's a guy that he can handle that sort of challenge or whatever you want to call it. Maybe that's why he was so quick to point out Bo Naylor. I don't know. We'll see. The other area they were asking him about was, where are the Guardians find all their bullpen guys? Obviously, they're talking about the issue with the gambling and all that stuff. They said the bullpen was still pretty good without him. And then unprompted, Stephen Vogt said, well, we got another guy coming named Franco Aleman. And he acknowledged Franco Aleman's injuries, but he said they were very excited about him. So I think dropping Franco Aleman by name without being asked about him is very interesting. He was asked about Chase Lauder throughout the day too. And he also mentioned the importance of David Fry, saying it's important for him to be able to play the field for them and catch. And they also said there'd be a lot of competition at spring training. And the idea was that Rocchio would work at second and Arias would work at short, and they would move around a little just to prepare. So those were a couple things that I caught that I thought were at least notable from Vogt on day one.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I don't see it with Aleman. Maybe the health was enough to really hold him back, but he has just seemed like he's gone backwards the past few years. So I'd love to be wrong, because they could definitely use him. But yeah, it's kind of what you expect outside of the Aleman. It's weird to hear a manager pull that name. Oh, great. That's kind of the most shocking part about it, is pulling the AAA reliever. Now, that might be the only reliever he knows by name in AAA at the same time. So
that's true. That's true.
But yeah, it is.
He didn't mention Espino by name, which,
that's you can't count on it. Espino's going to sneeze and break every bone in his body.
Oh, come on. I did that a few weeks ago, and I'm fine now.
I mean, I want Espino to be healthy. I want this to be like as a Junior Segalskis, and it's all behind him, and he just goes onwards and upwards from here. But until a guy shows that they're going to do that, I just have a hard time believing it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I just thought, like you said, that's gonna be true. That was the only AAA reliever he knew by name. I always just pay attention to when they bring up guys unprompted that don't make sense. But that one, I do like Alman. I agree with you. It's just, we haven't seen it. All right, I think we haven't seen the right-handed power bat. Everybody wants one, not just Cleveland. How many actually exist? We'll talk about that next. World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and there's 48 teams for the first time ever. It's going to be a massive tournament. Let's be honest, tickets is going to be the hard part to come by. That's why the Gametime app is super clutch. It finally gives fans like you and I a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats to any event. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, buy tickets the moment they hit the app, puts the power back in your hands, and makes going to the World Cup a real possibility instead of impossible. Now, I've just gone to a few concerts this month. I've been to a Cavs game. My wife and I, we like to give each other experience-type gifts for Christmas. And Gametime is the great place to do that because you're going to find great deals and the best discounts and all the best seats on Gametime because you can check for concert tickets, sporting events, theater, concerts, all that fun stuff. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, Gametime. If you're in need of more Guardians talk this offseason to warm you up, make sure you're following Jeff at Jeff MLB Drafts everywhere, myself at JL_baseball or JL Baseball. You can join the Locked On Guardians Insiders Club where we text with the community daily, drop some news, some rumors, other topics, mailbag questions we asked for our insiders. We did that last week, and we do monthly video chats, which I know I owe our insiders a video chat coming up this week, and some bonus content from time to time as well. It's joinsubtext.com/LockedOnGuardians to tap in. All right. MLB.com's Mike Petriello, who's one of their researchers.
That's a lot of great work.
Does a lot of great work, yes. A lot with savant-based data. Does a great job translating what the data means into like real words and concepts you can understand. But he wrote an article recently saying that right-handed hitters are the most difficult player to find this offseason. And he noted 16 right-handed outfielders who played 50% of their games in the outfield in 2025 had 400 plate appearances or more with 100 OPS plus or better. So 16 of all of the outfielders that are right-handed that had 400 plate appearances this year were league average hitters or better. And that would be like, Judge, Acuna, Julio Rodriguez, Byron Buxton. There was also Harrison Bader, Taylor Ward, Randy Arozarena. And then you got Jason, I wish it was Jason Churio, who's a switch hitter. Jackson Churio, Andy Pages, and Wyatt Langford. 2024, there were 17 of those guys. And he also noted that in 2009, there were 31 right-handed hitters who had an OPS plus of 100 or better that were right-handed hitters. That was the lowest. This year was the lowest in 6 decades. The last time there were fewer right-handed hitting outfielders with an average OPS plus or better was 1960. There were only 15 that year. That was the pre-expansion era. The lowest since integration was 1 out of every 8 right-handed hitting outfielders was an average hitter. And then just to note for this, in 2025, right-handed hitting outfielders had a average OPS of 718. All shortstops in 2025, Jeff, had an average OPS of 723. So shortstops barely out-averaged OPS of right-handed hitting outfielders. So right-handed hitting outfielders barely exist, Jeff, at least ones that are above average.
Yeah, it's that situation that we've talked about that. First off, it's hard to find outfielders in general. Like we've talked about that there's just a bunch of them that aren't performing as well or quite up to par, and that it's easier said than done to find them. And then the idea of a right-handed bat. I've always been someone who says just get the best hitter and don't care how they hit. But because of this situation, and people fixate on this with Cleveland in particular, I think in that same article it talked about like Cleveland was the only team that had just one right-handed hitter get a majority of at bats since like the early 1900s, maybe it was. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head with Gabby Arias. But yeah, it's very hard to find. There's not a lot of them. One guy who I don't think qualified because he spent so much time at DH and the player I was talking about earlier that I still wonder if Cleveland is Seiya Suzuki. But I also wonder if he'd agree. He's got to agree. He's got a full no trade. And the history of Japanese players wanting to have anything to do with Cleveland has been very low. And you can go back and look at Ichiro's comments. When Ichiro buried Cleveland, that buried the city, I think, for a lot of other Japanese players because of Ichiro's influence in statements. Yeah, he went out of his way to what was his comment. If I ever say I'm happy to play in Cleveland, punch me in the face because I'm lying, was I believe the quote that he made.
He got so aggressive with that.
He did. He really went out of his way.
What did we do to him? I don't understand. I like Ichiro.
I did as well.
I bet you a lot of the Ichiro hate he felt here had to do with the fact that he won Rookie of the Year in 2001 over CC Sabathia. I bet you that's what it is.
But either way, it's like, if you go to Suzuki, I'm like, I don't even know who there is. Like that's that situation. It's like, I'm like, who is a legitimate right-handed option? A legitimate, again, like someone they could acquire, someone that other teams aren't looking to trade their guys because of how rare they are. It's a difficult situation. It's always, when I put together my Brendan Doyle, who can't hit outside of Colorado.
Yeah, let alone have an average show. Yeah. He hasn't had an above average WRC plus outside of Colorado in his career.
I mean, he hasn't even been 20% near league average. He's been like 30% below league average outside of Colorado. So it's hard to find that. It's a magical mix that is increasingly hard to find. And yeah, again, that's why I'm not fixated on handedness. That's why like Tyler Soderstrom is my dream, even though he's a lefty, because I just want a guy who can hit. And honestly, like most right-handed hitters I feel like I see coming up anymore when I'm covering the draft are shortstops. Like, it's guys who are shortstop, second base. It's handy to be throwing right-handed from there. So it makes sense. But, you don't see that's about it. Most of their positions, seeing more and more lefties with the high-end players. And that's always kind of the interesting thing, too. It's like, we know that most at-bats are still from right-handed hitters. They still exist out there. There's still a lot of them, but we just don't see kind of the high-end right-handed hitter is not something we see as much anymore. Because I think part of that, honestly, is it's easier to be a fringe to good guy as a left-handed bat because you're mostly facing right-handed pitching. Whereas when you're a right-handed hitter, you're mostly facing right-handed pitching, so it's harder to do that. I think when you're a left-handed hitter, it helps elevate you a little bit by just the fact you're a left-handed hitter and you're facing mostly the other side.
One of the things I want to look up, maybe I'll bring it back. Maybe I'll prepare it for the live stream tomorrow during the lottery to see how many teams had the platoon advantage more than half the time. I know the Guardians were toward the top, and obviously they still stunk even with the platoon advantage because you don't have a platoon advantage if that guy can't hit that side of the plate. So it doesn't really matter how they hit it. They don't hit the right-handed pitchers. But I want to see how many teams tried to have the platoon advantage last year. I'll bring that up maybe tomorrow. But Jeff, real quickly, do you want to guess?
Cleveland, Arizona, Washington, Tampa, Pittsburgh are your top five.
Okay, so that's top five. I wonder were they all? I mean, obviously those were all over 50%, but I want to know how many teams had it more than half the time. So
I'll say this: the lowest is the Houston Astros at 45.1, and the fifth lowest is Colorado at 47.7 in quick findings. So it tells you
most teams are close to 50%.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's close. Everyone would round up because the lowest is a 45, so I'd round up. I mean, Pittsburgh is still at 61. Cleveland was at 78. So, yeah.
And those two teams had terrible offense. Great. Okay, the last 4 years, let's go back to 2021 because I'm not going to do 2020 and before. How many 30 home run seasons do you think there have been by right-handed hitting outfielders since 2021, Jeff? How many do you want to guess?
2021? Well, you mentioned some of the names that are guys who do that a lot. I'm going to guess since 21, that's what? Counting 21s, that gives me
4 years.
21, years, 22, 5 years, right? So 5 years. I would have to say, my guess is going to be 17.
Actually, it's more than that. 25 hitters over the last 5 years that are right-handed hitting outfielders have hit 30 home runs or more. I guess we include Brent Rooker in that. He played the outfield. And Mookie Betts is included there. If you want to go a little bit deeper, how many do you think have had 20 or more.
So does like a Aaron Judge count once, or does he count?
No, this is multiple seasons. This is multiple seasons.
Okay.
So this is every season for every player, every season. The last
so like Aaron
years.
Judge would appear like 5 times, is what we're saying.
Aaron Judge is the top 3 guys in this list, and he's 5 of the top 6.
So yeah, so I was thinking he might only count once in the first grouping, which I don't know if that makes my number better.
He's
or worse.
on here all 5 times.
Okay.
His lowest output was 39.
I don't know. At 20 home runs, if it was like low 20s,
25 for 30. Yeah.
Okay, 25 for 30. So if we're dropping that to 20, let's say it's like 52.
A little bit more. It's 70. I'm sorry. It's 70.
It's
75.
That's not close.
So 75 different times there's been 20 or more home runs by a right-handed hitting outfielder. Obviously, none have been Cleveland, but that is out of
average of 15 a year.
Yes, and that is out of 115 qualified outfielders, by the way, over the last 5 years. So last 5 years, 115 right-handed hitting outfielders have qualified for the Major League average, and only 75 have hit 20 home runs or more.
So yeah, so there's basically 15 of them a year. I think like 3 of them are on the Yankees, unfortunately, and 3 of them are on the Dodgers, and that leaves the 9 for the other, and 3 of them are like on the Mets. So then that leaves like about 6 guys for the rest of the league to fight.
And that was part of Mike Petriello's point too. He's saying like used to be you had 15 or whatever it was pre-integration or pre-expansion of right-handed hitting outfielders that had an OPS plus of 100 or better. Well, we had 16 teams back then. So yes, almost every team was able to have one of those guys. Now you got 30 teams, and soon it's going to be 32, and it's just harder to spread that out. So, all right, tomorrow we're going to have the live stream of the MLB draft lottery.
Definitely that's the situation.
At 5:30, we'll be live for the MLB draft lottery, so we'll talk more there. We will have a recap of that, the impact for the Guardians. We'll do a Rule 5 draft preview because that's coming on Wednesday. And if any news happens, we will wrap that up for you as well on the regular show. So thank you for tuning in today at Locked On Guardians. So make sure you check out that show tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Guardians so you get all of the latest episodes. And if you made your Spotify Wrap, prove it on social media. You'll get a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform. We'll drop you a code. If you're one of the first to join to get your favorite show ad-free, exclusive access to a members-only Discord channel. Hope to see you there.
Thank you all for joining us, and go Guardians, go.